I'd now like to welcome to the show Heisman Trophy winner of 2 Super Bowls, MVP of 1, Hall of Famer Roger Staubach. Roger, welcome to Talking Sports with the Bird. How you doing?
Okay, John. Great being with you.
Classic game this past Sunday. I know it didn't turn up well on your side of it with Dallas and Green Bay, but the one thing I look at, well, there's a lot of things to look at in the game, but down 21-3, your feelings of Dak Prescott. A rookie in the backfield with Elliott to lead the team back being down 21-3 to a quarterback that was on fire like Aaron Rodgers. Talk about your feelings with Prescott and how good hands Dallas seems to be in going forward.
Well, it's been it's been since the preseason. I was told by some Mississippi State friends that we got hit the lottery when we got Dak, and of course I didn't know much about him, and so I was watching him in the exhibition season, and he really played well. He played, but it's still the exhibition season. Then when the regular season started and Tony got hurt, it was amazing. He just he took over and he got better every game, and a lot of games he got off to maybe a little shaky start, but he finished strong, and so that showed a lot of moxie in a quarterback to be able to do the things he did during the season. And sure enough, in this playoff game, he personally played a great game in many ways. They got behind 21-3 in the first half, and he kept them in the game. They came back, tied the score, and almost pulled it out. So he's shown all through the season that he studies very, very hard. He doesn't make the mistakes a rookie would make, and he's just gonna, I think, continue to get better. And he says the right things. It seems like every time he's interviewed, he's just done a great job both on and off the field in Dallas.
It seems like he has that it factor. I'm reading a story of one of your former teammates, should be in the Hall of Fame, Cliff Harris, where he described how a team rallies around Dak Prescott, and he compared it how the Cowboys of the 70s rallied around you. That's the kind of thing where you never lose your calm, and you got that leadership characteristic. Is that really the biggest characteristic, positive characteristic that Dak Prescott has?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is you got to have confidence in yourself, and but you got to be able to transfer, especially the quarterback, and has got a major leadership position on the team, and you got to be able to transfer that confidence to your teammates, and he has done that, and you do that through your work ethic, how you practice, the time you spend in the room studying film, and the things that you do to show that your confidence is it's a real confidence, and you believe in that person, and that's what's happened. I mean, the team believed. We had a great quarterback that got hurt, Tony Romo, and so to have somebody to step in and do what Dak has done this year, it's not with a lack of effort. He's worked hard, and he's earned the confidence of his teammates, and it's a team that's played hard all season. They played together and played their guts out against a guy that it's hard to stop, as old Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that guy made some plays that I still can't believe that.
Unbelievable.
That last one to set up the field goal when he went to the left and fired the ball down on a perfect pass to, I think it was Cook or somebody.
The tight end, 35-yarder. Yep.
Yeah, so I think the offense got its act together, and after the 21-3, they really played good football, and Dak's done that all year.
Roger, you listen to Hall of Fame quarterback Roger Staubach. Talk about Aaron Rodgers for a second. In your day, watching the game after you played and watching the game now, have you ever seen a guy with a skill set comparable to Aaron Rodgers? You talked about that 35-yard pass, running to his left and kind of backpedaling, threw it on a line, great catch, but a 35-yard pass. Who else is making that play?
Well, John, there's some quarterbacks that they make those little moves into the pocket, like Brady. He's not one that's going to really run out of the pocket that often, and or Peyton Manning. And then there's certain quarterbacks that can really buy time and once they get out of the pocket, they really have that ability to throw the football with extreme accuracy, and Rodgers is probably one of the best ever. But there's been quite a few quarterbacks, whether it's Elway or we could get out list or that Steve Young or somebody that they can move around and buy time and throw the football, and someone is going to be open if you get enough time. And I did a little of that myself.
I know that.
And I ran at times and opened up. And Rodgers is just the best at that. I think he can go to his left, his right, and I've really admired the talent he's got when he gets out of that pocket. He's dangerous in the pocket, but he's even more dangerous sometimes out of the pocket.
Without a doubt. Tony Romo, talk about the class he showed during the year. You're a very competitive guy. He's obviously a very competitive guy and a very well-liked guy, not just by Dallas fans, but I think by people around the country. Talk about how tough this must have been, probably his best team, and he couldn't get back on the field, and how much class he's handled this year with.
Yeah, Tony has been... he had some 8-8 years that probably would have been a lot worse if it wasn't for Tony. The team, we weren't the strongest team there for years, and Tony still performed and really had some great games. And then when he got some people around him, we were 12-4 a couple years ago, and so he's fiercely competitive. He's one heck of a player. He got back healthy again, but he saw what Dak was doing. Dak was, game after game was just doing a heck of a job, and he handled it the way you should handle it. He mentioned that Dak had the momentum. It was Dak's team, and Tony helped him the best he could whenever he. So it was a classy way of doing things. Tony's a team player, and he showed it.
Roger, when you entered Navy, you had this story about you're being colorblind, and I'm assuming you still are. And talk about the fact that you probably, I don't want to say shouldn't have got into Navy, but if the guy that was giving the colorblind test was paying attention, we'd be talking about a different career right now, no?
Well, that's probably correct. I was partially colorblind. I mean, it's kind of the male thing of colorblindness. I can. And if you're partially colorblind, you're limited as far as Navy line or flying. And at the time, if I hadn't passed I passed the test at the Fitzsimmons Army Hospital in Denver, Colorado, and it was the the dot, the green, the red, and white dots, and I didn't get them all right. And the guy that was with me, Larry Kosisko, he was watching me, and he said, you missed a few, but the guy that was doing the test really wasn't paying a whole lot of attention, so he saw the ones that I got right, but he missed. So he passed me on my color test, and the only time I ever passed the test. And when I was at the Naval Academy, they said, "Well, you got a bit of a problem here." And so once you're in there, I was okay. So I think it was very fortuitous because I'm a very lucky guy to go to the Naval Academy, and I'm glad I did.
Hey, how special, the Army-Navy game, I know there's a lot of college football fans, but unless you have a person in the military or have played in that game, talk about what a special event that is. It's a standalone game, which is great. I watch it every year. We're not going to talk about the result this past year, but talk about just how cool it was when you played your first one in '62 with JFK in attendance with the coin toss.
Yeah, I was a plebe in '61, and you couldn't play varsity football back then, just 3 years. And so my plebe year, we had a plebe football team, and we, of course, went to the game, and I'm watching the game. The president was there in '61 also, and I said, "Oh, holy cow!" I'm a nervous wreck sitting in the stands here. I don't know if I'll ever be able to play in this game. It's such a big deal. And so all of a sudden, the next year, there I was. I was the starting quarterback in the game, and it was probably the most nervous I've ever been before a football game. Fortunately, I got rid of the nervousness and had a pretty good game. And the president was there, and it was just one of the best. That game, that first Army Navy win and the first Super Bowl win were the two games that when I was in that locker room, I never felt so good after a sporting event.
You go to the next year, the year you win the Heisman, and there was a campaign, probably the first ever Heisman Trophy campaign for you. But I heard a couple of comments about your ex-coach, and I believe the public relations guy. Basically, it was tough to do a campaign because you were very uncomfortable with the press back then. Talk about the year of '63 when you eventually did win the Heisman.
Well, a lot of it took place at the end of the '62 season. We almost upset Southern Cal out, and they were national champs, and then we beat Army, and we had some good momentum as a football team. And sure enough, we went into the '63 season. We opened up against West Virginia. They were favored. They were really a good team, and we kind of took it to them in the opening game. And we just then we beat Michigan in Ann Arbor, and so we beat Notre Dame that year. We beat Pitt, and so I really was the byproduct of a really good football team, and I was playing good football.
Yeah.
And so the Heisman really kind of is it no matter what anybody says, it's a team event because there's not many great players on bad teams that get the Heisman. It's good players on good teams, and so we really had a great year. We were 9-1 that year, and I was able to stay. They started watching me at the end of the '62 season, so I don't think if they did that, I would have won the Heisman '63. But '63 turned out to be a really good year, and our team. I told all the guys that I was going to give them a piece of the Heisman. I'm still trying.
They're still waiting. I'm listening to the thing. They're still waiting for their piece. Did you give them the piece of the Heisman?
I'm still trying to figure out how to chip it off my Heisman. But
Listen to the Hall of Fame quarterback Roger Staubach. Tex Schramm signed you to a futures contract, knowing you had to give 4 years of service. The only other person that anybody I think remembers is David Robinson, kind of doing the same thing. How much, faith that I know you had other options. You could have signed somewhere else, but the faith that the Cowboys showed you, how much pressure did you feel? Wow, these guys are really putting it out there, knowing I'm not going to play till I'm 27 years old.
Well, it started with Kansas City. I was drafted by both teams because they were both, the leagues hadn't merged yet, so I was shocked that they wanted to pay me something even if I never played for them before. And so I didn't have any money. My wife and I she had to sell her car to pay for our wedding reception. So and I was an ensign in the Navy, and she was a nurse, so she was going back to work. And all of a sudden, I found out that if I agreed to go with one of the teams, that they would actually. And I asked the Navy legal officer, said, "Hey, you're fine. You don't have to leave the Navy, and if they want to do that in case you leave after your obligation." So Dallas, I told Dallas that if I ever played again, I would play for Dallas, and it was it was great because then they stayed in touch with me, but I really didn't know I would play again. When you're young, 4 years seems like an eternity, and until the last year, I took leave to go to training camp. I went out there in Thousand Oaks for 2 weeks, and that's when I really realized I could play again. When I left Vietnam, of course, I wasn't in the best of shape. I was in decent shape because I was busy over there. I was a Navy guy supporting the Marine Corps, and I'd go work out and stuff, but I really didn't think I'd play again at that time. And then all of a sudden, I go to Pensacola Naval Air Station, and I was able to really stay in shape there. And then I went to Thousand Oaks, and I said, "Hey, I'll be 27. I'm probably a little bit stronger than I was when I was 23." So that's when I made up my mind when I came back from Thousand Oaks, my last year in the service, that I would play again. And I really enjoyed the service, and I was glad I was able to finish my 4 years, and I'd do it again in the second. I wouldn't trade anything for the chance I had to go to the Naval Academy and spend. I'm in a fraternity that I'm so daggone proud of, and I'm trying to do what I can to help our veterans. And I didn't retire. I didn't go 20 years, but I was part of that fraternity, and I'm very proud of that.
Definitely. The contract had you participating in training camp activities like you mentioned. When you really weren't, the players knew you weren't going to play till after your 4 years. I'm curious, how did the players in camp receive you when you were there, knowing your time with them was a couple of years away?
Well, the year that last year when I did go to camp for those 2 weeks, it was mostly rookies, and then the veterans came in at the end, and I really, if I didn't have a good camp, and the coaches didn't say, "Hey, Roger, we think you can play in the NFL," I would not have, I wouldn't have left. But I had a good camp, and I was, Coach Landry even said, he said we can sure use you, and then it was fortuitous because before I left that summer when I left the service to go back out to Thousand Oaks, Don Meredith retired. So Don Meredith was one fantastic. He was 31 years old. So when he retired, instead of them trading for another veteran quarterback to play behind Craig Morton, they allowed me to do it because of that training camp I had the year before. So that training camp made a big difference in my life because I decided I was going to try to play professional football, and also it gave the coaches enough confidence to keep me as a backup quarterback instead of trading for another veteran quarterback.
So you're a rookie at 27. I'm going to read a quote by your coach at Navy, Wayne Harden, said that his best coaching job ever was not to coach you. Direct polar opposite of the coach that you're stepping into with the Dallas Cowboys. Talk about Tom Landry, your relationship with him, and how much different it was. Kind of like I'm not going to say you weren't coached at Navy, but you understand what the coach was saying. There was no schematics like Tom Landry wanted you to follow when you were playing in Navy. Talk about that difference in those two coaches and the two schemes.
Well, they were both really, really good coaches. They were good, creative, strategic coaches, good offensive minds. Wayne Harden had a lot of really. Our game plans were good. They were. We had some. He put some shotgun plays in for me in college, and used me as my running, and he kind of. He was very creative, and Coach Landry was the same way, except that he wanted me to stay in the pocket. He didn't really want me to run around. But we put the shotgun in with the Cowboys. We had receivers in motion. So the coach was he was an engineer, and he was a great defensive coach with the Green Bay Packers, the New York Giants. With the New York Giants, and with Lombardi was there with him with the Giants.
Yes, in the 50s, yep.
And when he came to Dallas, he wanted to make the offense really confusing to the defense. So we were really a creative team, and I really enjoyed that. I was a kind of as much as I ran in the NFL, he was not crazy about that. So we had some issues over that, but because he knew that I wanted to win and I could do the other things. He put up with me, and I was lucky. I
think it was a good decision. It was a good decision. It was a Hall of Famer, Roger Staubach. Hey, talk to Craig Morton. You mentioned Craig Morton. How tough is it when you went through those couple of years where you didn't really know who had the starting job, and then the couple of games where he was basically shuttling you guys in and out to bring plays into the huddle? You talked about leadership and quarterback being a position of leadership and dividing the locker room when you've got all that commotion going on as to who the starter is. Talk about that.
Well, you're not gonna get luckier than to play with a guy like Craig Morton. I mean, Craig was a heck of a quarterback. He had some injuries. We battled back and forth, and then that third year we both had great training camps, and we both were going to be the starting quarterback. So Coach Landry was alternating this, and I think Coach really didn't. Quarterback. Here's a game plan, and here's you execute the game plan. But a quarterback has influence on the team. So and there's emotions, there's things that happen out there. And so our team kind of got divided. I think half the team I think like Craig, and a lot of them like me, and so we were different style of quarterbacks, and I got a chance to start. We were 4-3 at the time, and that's when I got a chance to start. And Craig supported me. We played together the next year. I got hurt, and he took over, and then we played again with the 73. Then he went to the Giants. But I couldn't have had a luckier to have a guy that supported me, even though he wanted the job. We both wanted to be the starting quarterback, but but when I got the chance to do it, the guy was there for me, and I can't say enough good things about Craig Morton, and he was a heck of a football player too, and went on to Denver and was MVP in the league, and we played him in a Super Bowl, and so he, you know, I was really fortunate to have someone like Craig when I did win the starting job, that he supported me.
America's team. Tell me in your words, you hear athletes today, they love to go into visiting environments where there's a rivalry and the fans can't stand them. You guys were hated. I mean, this is New York territory up here, so you guys dominated the 70s. Not too many Giant fans fell in love with the Cowboys. Who was your biggest rival in that league? And why do you feel Dallas was so hated throughout the country except for Dallas? Not you. You know what I'm saying. The moniker of America's team.
Yeah. Well, I think the Cowboys, they either love the Cowboys or hate the Cowboys. Even to this day, the Cowboys ratings on TV, people want to. I mean, there's that interest in goes back to the 70s and Coach Landry and what a great person he was, and standing on the sidelines with this hat,
iconic.
There was just something about him, and so we were a winning team, and we in the 70s in our conference, the Redskins became. A pretty formidable team, and the Giants and the Eagles were struggling in the 70s, and so it really came down to us and the Redskins and the NFC, and we were in five Super Bowls, and the team that really that we had the most problems with, who we only played a couple times, was the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were a fantastic football team in the AFC, and we played them in. We won a couple Super Bowls, and we lost a couple tough ones to Pittsburgh, 21-17, 35-31, and they had Bradshaw, who was Terry Bradshaw was made big plays. I mean, people don't realize how good he was. I mean, they do realize how good he was, but he made plays when they had to make plays, and their defense was great. So we definitely gave the Steelers all they could handle, but that was the 35-31 loss to the Steelers. Really made the Steelers the team of the 70s. That was their third Super Bowl win that would have been ours. So we had to have a little humble pie with playing the Steelers.
A couple more before we get you out of here. Two plays in particular in the 70s. The Hail Mary against Minnesota. I remember having Drew Pearson on years ago. A lot of people forget that Pearson caught an amazing 35-yarder on the 50-yard line to set that Hail Mary up. Second part of that is he pushed off on Nate Wright. I don't care what he says. I don't care what you say. Talk about the Hail Mary against Minnesota in 75.
Well, if you're watching the film time and time again, John, Nate slipped and Drew was right there, and I intentionally underthrew him, so he caught the ball on his hip.
Okay.
He caught that 4th and 17, and I think an usher or somebody kicked him on the field there, so that was on film. So it got a little bit testy in that stadium, and then really it was a play that we had no timeouts left, and it was you didn't really practice for Hail Marys back then. The term wasn't used even back then. It was the alley-oop or the bomb, and. Yep. And the defense still was somewhat in a normal defense. Paul Krause was the safety, and I tried to look him off a little bit, and then I threw to the right, and it was just Nate Wright and Drew. And sure enough, the ball was a little bit underthrown, and Drew caught it on his hip and made a great catch. Nate definitely slipped, and Drew went in the end zone. And,
wow.
And after the game, I basically said a Hail Mary, and they asked me what I was thinking. I said, well, I just closed my eyes and said a Hail Mary, somebody worded that said, Staubach said Hail Mary, and that he just threw it up and prayed or something. But the term Hail Mary started on that play in the game, and now Aaron Rodgers is Mr. Hail Mary, I'll tell you.
But you started it all, man. These are amazing
but
memories.
It's a term. I'm proud of I started the term. It was a big win for us. Then we went out and beat the Rams and and that sent us to that 21-17 Super Bowl against the Steelers. Yep. But that was a big win for us in '75.
A happier time, Super Bowl 12. You win 27-10. You mentioned the opposing quarterback was Craig Morton. With the rule changes today, when I watched that replay of Butch Johnson, I didn't think it was complete then. There's no way that's a complete pass today. When you look at Des Bryant 2 years ago, where you now have to catch a ball, wrap it up in a box, walk out of the stadium. You go back to 77 with that great catch by Butch Johnson, where you called an audible. Talk about that play, that Super Bowl, and would that be a catch today with the rule changes?
Well, John, you're kind of getting on America's team here a little bit. Are you? Do you support the Taliban also? Or what's the deal here?
I'm a Raider fan, so it's been it was a great year this year.
You're a Raider
I'm
fan.
a Raider fan. When I met Franco Harris a couple of years ago, I told him the Immaculate Reception was nonsense, so I don't have many memories from 1983 on. That's what I'm going with.
The Butch Johnson was, I told Butch to run a post. He wasn't even supposed to. He's supposed to run an in route. So,
yep.
That was so when I threw it, I thought I overthrew him. But when he crossed the goal line, he did have possession of the ball, but he hit the ground. It wasn't there. So I think back then it really was a good play. Today, you're right. It probably would be because he didn't, when he hit the ground, the ball was squibbed away. But anyway, when he went off to the side, Coach Landry was always adamant about. I used to change things up a little bit now and then, so he wouldn't get on me, but he got Butch. He said, "Hey, Butch, what are you doing? You're supposed to run an in route." And Butch said, "Well, Roger told me to." Okay, Butch. And he never said a word to me about it, but it was a big play in that game, and it was Butch made one heck of a catch.
Last one for you. Listen to Hall of Famer Roger Staubach. First of all, I wanted
Nate Wright. We're pushing him down on the ground.
I'm a Giant fan in the 70s. I'm a Raider. Raiders are number one. Giants are number two. Dallas gave us a lot of bad memories. Come on.
I'm in misery now after we just lost a tough game the other day, and now I got you all over the old days.
Just two. Last one. You mentioned Steve Young, John Elway, and I've read articles about them that you were like a hero to them growing up. I'm going to read a quote that former quarterback Bart Starr of the Packers said, "I think if I had some of that Staubach competitiveness, I'd have been much better." What do you think your best characteristic was throughout your career?
Well, I think it was fortunately, God gave me the skills of being able. I had a good arm. I was a baseball player, and as a kid, and I was switched to quarterback, and I was in high school because of my arm, and so I did have some physical skills. But I really believe a lot of it had to do with hard work. I just feel like it takes a lot of unspectacular preparation to get spectacular results, and so I worked at it, and I got fortunate. I could have been drafted by the New Orleans Saints back in the 70s, and I got with the Dallas Cowboys. So you just you do the best with when you're given an opportunity, and I was very fortunate to play for a great coach and a great team in the 70s, and I wish we would have won a few more Super Bowls, but I'm very grateful for the ones we won, and so I feel that a lot of it has to do with hard work, and then the good fortune of being with a lot of great players.
Roger, I want to thank you for all the time. I feel like I'm 16, 17 years old again, going back to the 70s with those memories. I'm telling you, a lot of my audience is really going to love hearing this interview and sharing some of the memories of the great Dallas. How about that? Of the great Dallas Cowboys of the 70s. How about that?
Well, I appreciate that.
And thanks, Anita, for putting up with all my persistence. Thanks so much, Roger.
Okay, John, you take care.
Take care. You too. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.